Please pretend to be my daughter's mother, I beg you.
It was a rainy afternoon in the Bronx, New York. Light droplets slid down the foggy glass windows of a small Italian bakery tucked away on a side street. Inside, the smell of fresh bread and ricotta cannoli filled the air. Sienna Blake, a 25-year-old freelance designer, slipped in through the door just before the rain picked up. She had no intention of buying anything. She just needed a place to wait out the weather and finish some quick client edits on her tablet. Her blonde hair, softly curled and damp from the drizzle, fell past her shoulders as she settled at a corner table by the window. Then she noticed the little girl. Dressed in a pink dress with ruffled sleeves, her golden curls tied up in two small pigtails. The child stood near the counter, alone, with wide, watery eyes. Her lips trembled as she looked around, clearly searching for someone. Sienna stood. "Hey there," she said gently, crouching beside the girl. "Are you lost?" The girl sniffled and gave a shaky nod. "My daddy was just here. He said to wait, but he's not coming back. Just like Mommy." That sentence hit Sienna like a punch to the chest, and she reached out carefully. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Anna," the girl whispered. "Well, Anna," Sienna smiled softly. "Do you want to sit with me until your daddy gets back? We can look out the window and make up stories about people walking by." Anna hesitated, then nodded. Within minutes, the tears had dried, and the two were giggling about a man in a bright yellow raincoat who looked like a banana. Sienna was mid-story when the bakery door swung open, and a tall man in a dark coat rushed in, clearly out of breath. His sharp jawline, cold eyes, and tailored black suit made him stand out immediately. But what caught Sienna's attention was the tension radiating from him. The way the elderly baker behind the counter straightened up nervously. The way two men in leather jackets appeared behind him like shadows. "Anna!" he called, his voice deep and commanding. Anna stood up quickly. "Daddy!" Dante Moretti exhaled in relief, walking toward them with controlled urgency. "I turned around for 2 seconds and she wandered off," he said. His accent thick, Italian roots evident in every syllable. His eyes, dark as coal, finally landed on Sienna. They weren't warm. "Thank you," he added curtly, nodding at her. "She's okay," Sienna replied, standing. "She was just scared." Dante gave a stiff nod, scooped Anna into his arms, and exited as quickly as he came. No further words, no real eye contact. But Sienna caught the way his hand instinctively shielded Anna's head as they stepped into the rain, and the way the two men flanking him scanned the street with calculated precision. She sat back down, slightly stunned. She didn't know who he was, but she knew danger when she saw it. 3 days later, there was a knock at her apartment door. She opened it to find the same man, Dante, standing in the hallway of her building, still in a suit, no umbrella this time, but flanked by one of those same men from the bakery. He looked slightly out of place, like a wolf in a rabbit's den. Too polished, too dangerous for this old walk-up with creaky stairs and warm yellow lighting. "I hope you don't mind," he said, his voice smoother now, but no less intense. "Anna wouldn't stop asking for you. I couldn't find any contact. I asked around at the bakery, and one of the staff mentioned your business card on the counter." His eyes locked on hers. "May I come in?" Sienna blinked, instinct telling her to say no. But something about the way he said Anna's name made her hesitate. "Sure." He stepped inside, the man with him staying in the hallway. She motioned toward the small dining table. "I'll make it quick," Dante said, folding his hands on the table, rings glinting under the light. "It's Anna's birthday next week. She hasn't celebrated since her mother died. I've tried everything. Party planners, child therapists, even actors." Sienna's brows drew together. "Actors?" "She refuses to celebrate unless her mother is there. She insists the only person she trusts is you." He paused, jaw tightening. "She thinks you're her mom." Sienna paled. "What?" "She told me," he continued, his voice low, controlled, "that you're the one who makes her feel safe. So..." He cleared his throat, eyes never leaving hers. "I need you to pretend to be my wife. Just for a week. For Anna." She stared at him, stunned. You want me to be your fake wife for a 5-year-old? Dante didn't flinch. Yes. Sienna stood, pacing. This is insane. You don't know me. I don't know you. And this little girl only asks for you, he finished. That stopped her. Sienna shook her head. I'm sorry, I can't do that. But just as she opened the door to show him out, Anna's voice echoed in her mind. Just like Mommy. And then Dante said quietly, she hasn't slept through the night in months. That day at the bakery, she slept the whole way home. Sienna hesitated, her hand frozen on the doorknob. Later that night, she met them again. All right, she said, looking Dante dead in the eyes. 1 week, that's it. And no one, no neighbors, no associates, no photographers, gets to think it's real. After that, we go back to strangers. Understood? Dante nodded slowly, a ghost of something unreadable crossing his face. Understood. But neither of them realized that 1 week could change everything. The iron gates of the Moretti estate opened slowly as Sienna's cab pulled into the circular driveway. The mansion before her looked more like a fortress than a home. Stone walls, tall windows with security bars hidden behind elegant designs, and guards positioned discreetly along the perimeter. For all its grandeur, it held no warmth. She stepped out with her weekend bag, nerves fluttering. Before she could knock, the door flew open. Mommy! Anna ran out in her pink dress, pigtails bouncing, and threw herself into Sienna's arms. Sienna crouched, hugging her tightly. Hi, sweetheart, she said softly, still adjusting to being called that name. Dante followed behind, his expression unreadable, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing tattoos she hadn't noticed before. Intricate designs that looked like they told stories. She's been counting down the hours, he said. I can tell, Sienna replied, brushing Anna's curls back. Inside, the house was immaculate. Marble floors, high ceilings, dark wood furnishings. Beautiful, but cold, guarded. A woman in her 50s, stern-faced but elegant, approached them. This way, Dante said, leading her past the woman and 2 men in suits who watched from the shadows. I told the household you've returned from Italy. They've been briefed. Briefed, she echoed with a wry smile. Like I'm on a mission. He allowed a faint smirk. In a way, you are. As they reached the guest wing, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s, dressed in all black, appeared. Dante's right hand, clearly. Mrs. Moretti, she greeted with a nod, her accent thick Sicilian. Welcome back. Sienna took the greeting, masking her discomfort at the title. I've prepared the rooms, the woman continued. Her name was Lucia. Would you prefer the master suite with Mr. Moretti or a separate one? The silence stretched. Sienna opened her mouth. Dante cleared his throat. Separate is fine. Lucia's eyes narrowed slightly, suspicious, but she nodded. Very good. Once alone, Sienna glanced at Dante. We should work on our backstory. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Agreed. That evening, they sat in the kitchen, going over their fabricated love story. How they met, when they got engaged, why she'd gone to Italy. It felt surreal, rehearsing a romance that had never existed. Favorite memory together? Dante asked, reading from notes on his phone. Sienna leaned her chin on her hand. Maybe the time you hired me to lie to everyone you know. He actually laughed, a rare sound. Fair. They were still practicing when Anna bounded in with a mixing bowl. Can we make cookies like before? Dante raised a brow. We did that? Sienna smiled. Apparently we're great bakers. Soon the kitchen transformed. Flour dusted the counters, chocolate chips scattered, and laughter echoed. Sienna taught Anna to crack eggs while Dante fumbled but tried, his massive hands surprisingly gentle with the tiny measuring spoons. Later, Sienna read Anna her favorite book in bed. Dante watched from the doorway, arms folded, expression soft, something vulnerable breaking through his usual armor. After Anna fell asleep, he walked Sienna to the hallway. She's calmer with you than I've seen in a long time, he said quietly, his voice rough. Even more than with me. She loves you, Dante. Sienna said gently. But I think she's not sure how to connect with this life. He didn't respond, but his eyes gave away more than his words ever had. The weight of being who he was, what he did, the danger he carried like a second skin. The next few days blurred the lines further. At breakfast, Anna laughed so hard she spilled her juice. Dante wordlessly cleaned it up. At night, they watched movies until Anna fell asleep curled between them. What began as fiction started to feel strangely real. Sienna noticed Anna would glance at Dante before hugging him. Unsure if it was allowed, she gently bridged the gap, suggesting Dante read bedtime stories or letting Anna pull him into playtime. One evening, after Sienna tucked Anna in, Dante spoke from the door. "Thank you." She turned. "For what?" "For going beyond what I asked." She smiled. "I didn't know how to fake being a mom, so I stopped trying." Their eyes locked, and something shifted between them. Not attraction, not admiration. Respect, understanding. The boundary between acting and truth was beginning to fade. By the end of the third day, the Moretti mansion didn't feel as cold anymore. Not because of the weather, but because of the subtle shifts that had taken root within its walls. Sienna had expected this arrangement to be awkward, maybe even dangerous. But what she hadn't expected was Dante Moretti. He was still reserved, still watchful, in that calculated way that made him hard to read. But when he was with Anna, really with her, something changed. His movements softened, his eyes lingered. He knelt to tie her shoes without a second thought, cut her toast into stars, and made sure her nightlight was working every evening. One night, Sienna walked into the living room to find Dante carefully braiding Anna's damp hair after her bath, his scarred knuckles moving with surprising delicacy, brows furrowed in concentration. "She says this is how you do it," he murmured without looking up, his accent thicker when he was focused. "She's got high standards," Sienna replied with a smile. She gets that from her mother." It was the first time he'd mentioned his late wife out loud. Sienna paused, sensing the weight behind the words. "She must have been amazing." "She was," he said simply. "And brave. Too brave for her own good." And that was all. Later that evening, after Anna had gone to bed, Sienna wandered the halls, looking for a glass of water. She followed the faint sound of music, soft, wistful notes drifting from the study. She stopped at the doorway. Dante was at a sleek black piano, his back to her, fingers moving effortlessly across the keys. The melody was haunting, beautiful. Something classical, though touched with something personal. Regret. Longing. Memory. He played with his eyes closed, completely unaware of her presence. Sienna stepped into the room quietly and sank into a leather chair in the corner, her breath catching in her throat when the final note faded. Dante sat still for a long moment. Then he spoke without turning. "You play?" "Not like that," she replied softly. "I didn't know you could." "It was my life once," he said, voice low. "Before I became this." She waited. "My wife used to say I was a different person when I played. Softer." He paused. "Maybe that's why I stopped." "You haven't lost that softness, Dante," Sienna said before she could stop herself. He turned, finally meeting her gaze, something dangerous and vulnerable warring in his dark eyes. "You see it?" "I do." A silence stretched between them, not heavy but charged. Then he stood, walked over, and leaned against the desk near her chair. "If this were real," he said suddenly, voice rough, "if all of this weren't just an arrangement, how would you feel about it?" Sienna blinked, her heart thudding. "What?" "If you were really my wife, Anna's mother. If I weren't." He gestured vaguely, and she understood. "If I weren't who I am. What I am." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her heart pounded against her ribs. The question wasn't part of the script, not part of the deal. She started, then looked away. "I'd say we're getting off topic." Dante chuckled under his breath, but there was sadness in it. "I'm sorry," he said. Sometimes it feels too easy. Too real." Sienna stood up gently. That's dangerous, Dante. He nodded slowly. I know. She walked past him toward the hallway, needing space, needing clarity. But just before she turned the corner, she glanced back. He hadn't moved, still leaning against the desk, watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. That night, Sienna lay awake in the guest suite, staring at the ceiling. Anna's soft snores echoed faintly through the baby monitor beside her. She thought about the music, the question, the way Dante had looked at her. Not like a man acting, but a man wondering if something he lost long ago could ever return. She had promised herself this would stay fake, but her heart was no longer following the rules. By the end of the week, Sienna was no longer just the woman pretending to be Dante Moretti's wife. Not in the eyes of neighbors, not in the eyes of the few trusted people allowed near Anna, and especially not in the eyes of one 5-year-old girl who now told everyone, "My mommy came back from Italy." And oddly, not even in Sienna's own reflection. Each day the act blurred further into something softer, less constructed, more real. She woke up earlier just to help Anna with breakfast. She stayed later, after bedtime, sipping wine in the kitchen while Dante worked nearby in silence that no longer felt awkward. One evening they found themselves cooking together without a word of planning. Dante chopping vegetables with the same precision he probably used for everything, while Sienna stirred the sauce, their movements syncing like they'd done it 100 times. Anna danced between them, twirling in her pink dress, declaring it a family dinner night. It should have felt like a performance, but it didn't. At night they talked, really talked, about their childhoods, their fears, the things they used to love before the world got loud and hard. Dante told her about the music he used to write, how he'd wanted to be a composer before his father died, and the family business, the real business, fell on his shoulders. Sienna told him how her mother had left when she was 12, and how design gave her a sense of control when nothing else made sense. "You make everything feel manageable," he had said quietly one night, swirling whiskey in his glass. "And you surprise me," she'd replied. Neither of them said what that really meant. Then came the charity fundraiser, a private event held at an upscale venue in Manhattan to raise money for children's hospitals. It was the kind of event where New York's elite mixed with New York's underground, all under the guise of philanthropy. Dante picked Sienna up from the bedroom hallway, pausing when he saw her in a simple black dress that hugged her waist, elegant and understated. Her blonde hair was swept to one side, a few loose curls brushing her collarbone. "You look stunning," he said, his voice lower than usual. She raised a brow, amused. Trying to sound convincing? His jaw tightened slightly. "I don't have to try." He offered her his arm. "Shall we, Mrs. Moretti?" At the fundraiser, eyes turned. People smiled, some with genuine warmth, others with calculation. Anna, dressed in a little velvet dress, introduced Sienna to everyone she met as "my real mommy now," and no one dared question it. Not when Dante Moretti's hand rested protectively on Sienna's lower back. At one point, an older man in an expensive suit approached Dante, complimenting his choice of attire. "Sharp tie, Moretti. My wife picked it," Dante replied with ease, glancing towards Sienna. "She always has better taste." Sienna looked over at him just in time to see the corner of his mouth lift in a private smile, something genuine breaking through his usual mask. Later, as the event carried on, she stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, watching Anna play with other children in a supervised area. Dante came to stand beside her, hands in his pockets, watching the same scene. She felt him looking at her even before he spoke. "When you laugh like that," he said quietly, his accent softening the edges of his words, "I forget what's real and what isn't." Sienna's breath caught. She didn't turn to face him. Couldn't. "Don't say that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because this is supposed to be pretend." "But it doesn't feel that way anymore," he said, voice rough with something raw. "Not to me. Not to Anna." Sienna looked down at the ring on her left hand. A prop, a beautiful diamond that Lucia had provided, meant only for the illusion. But it sat there like it belonged. "I told you from the start," she said quietly. "Only 1 week." "I know." Silence. But in that still moment, as the city lights glittered below and laughter echoed in the distance, Neither moved away. They didn't hold hands, didn't kiss, didn't confess, but something had shifted. An invisible line crossed and left behind. What had started as a performance was becoming a story written without a script. And neither of them knew how it would end. The cracks began with a photograph, an accidental shot snapped by a photographer outside the charity event. The image wasn't remarkable at first. Dante and Sienna walking side by side, Anna between them, her pink dress catching the light. But the next day, things shifted. An underground gossip site, one that specialized in exposing the powerful, released an article. Is Dante Moretti's new wife just a well-planned illusion? It was filled with vague suspicions and anonymous sources. But one detail stood out. An image of a document, blurry but unmistakable, showing Sienna's real last name. Blake. It had been captured unknowingly when Sienna opened her bag during the event. A sliver of her ID exposed to the camera's lens. The internet did the rest. By afternoon, forums were flooded with speculation. Dante Moretti, known mafia boss, had hired a woman to play his wife. Some said it was a PR move to soften his image. Others believed it was a cover for a secret scandal. Then it got personal. A woman named Monica Vale, now a senior consultant at a rival organization, posted a thinly veiled anonymous tip about Sienna. She had known Sienna briefly from college, just enough to piece together truths and twist them into headlines. It's not love, it's leverage. She was struggling financially before. This wouldn't be the first time someone pretty tried to climb her way up. The story spread like wildfire. When Sienna saw her name trending, her breath left her lungs. She stood in Dante's home office, holding her phone in disbelief. Across the room, Dante read the same news from his laptop, his jaw tight, eyes stormy in a way that promised violence. Sienna was the first to speak. "This is bad. It's going to affect Anna, your business, everything." Dante looked at her, something dangerous flickering in his gaze. "I can shut this down. I have people, lawyers, others. It'll pass." "But it won't," she said quietly, "because some of it looks true." "It's not. It feels true," she replied, voice cracking. "Dante, I agreed to pretend to be your wife. That's exactly what I am. And now the world knows." They didn't notice Anna standing outside the room until it was too late. Sienna's voice had risen. "We should have stopped before it got this far." Then came the tiny voice. "Why would you stop?" They both froze. Anna stood in the doorway, her small hands balled into fists, her cheeks flushed. "I heard you," she said, trembling. "You said you're not really my mommy. You're leaving, aren't you?" Sienna's knees gave way as she rushed to Anna. "Sweetheart, no, listen." Anna stepped back. "I don't want you to go. You're my mommy." The tears came too fast. Sienna pulled Anna into her arms and held her tight, burying her face into the child's curls. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered, barely able to breathe through her sobs. "I love you so much." Dante stood still, shaken in a way he hadn't been since the day his wife died. He had built empires on control, ruled through fear and precision. But watching his daughter break like that, he realized the truth had come too late. The lie they had built wasn't just theirs anymore. It belonged to a little girl who had opened her heart fully, believing the family around her was real. Later that night, Sienna packed a bag. She didn't say much to Dante. She couldn't trust herself to look at Anna again without crying. "I need to go," she said simply, voice hollow. "For her sake. For yours." Dante's hand shot out, gripping the doorframe. "Don't." She stopped, her back to him. "What?" "Don't leave." His voice was raw, stripped of its usual control. "Not like this. There's no other way." "There's always another way." He stepped closer. "In my world, we don't run. We fight. This isn't your world, Dante. This is a little girl's heart." He had no answer for that. When the door closed behind her, silence wrapped the house like a tomb. The fairy tale was over, and the cost of pretending had never felt so painfully real. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. Since Sienna left, Dante had thrown himself into business with machine-like efficiency. Meetings, negotiations, enforcing territory lines. The scandal around the fake wife had begun to fade, thanks to some strategic moves and a carefully orchestrated message sent through the underground. But the silence inside the house never faded. Anna no longer ran through the halls with pink ribbons bouncing in her hair. Her drawings no longer included rainbows or smiling stick figures holding hands. She asked fewer questions. She smiled less. And at night she started waking up again. At first, Dante brushed it off. Nightmares were normal. Kids were resilient. He tried reading to her, sitting by her bed, leaving lights on. Nothing worked. Then came the fever. It started subtly. Warm forehead, flushed cheeks. But by midnight, Anna was burning up, shivering under her blankets, tossing restlessly, mumbling words he could barely understand. "Mommy, Mommy, Sienna." Dante's heart clenched. He pressed a cold cloth to her forehead, held her tiny hand, whispered that he was here. But she kept calling the same name over and over. "Please," she murmured, eyes glassy. "Don't go, Mommy." Something inside Dante broke wide open. He scooped her up into his arms, wrapped her in a blanket, and rushed to the car. He didn't call his personal doctor. He didn't take her to the private clinic he owned. He took her to Siena. The city was drenched in rain, headlights reflecting on the slick streets as he drove, white knuckles gripping the wheel. He didn't take her to the hospital. He took her to Siena. It was past 1 a.m. when he reached her apartment building. Rain pounding down like the sky itself was breaking. Dante got out of the car, Anna cradled against his chest, blanket soaked in seconds. She whimpered, burying her face into his shoulder. He rang the buzzer. No answer. He rang again, holding down the button. A light flicked on upstairs. A shadow moved behind the curtain. Then footsteps. The door creaked open. Sienna stood there, hair messy, wrapped in an oversized sweatshirt. Her eyes widened when she saw them. Dante, drenched, Anna in his arms, burning with fever. "Dante." "I didn't know where else to go," he said hoarsely, rain dripping from his hair. Sienna rushed forward. "Is she—" "She's burning up," he said, voice tight with emotion. "And she keeps calling your name." Sienna reached out. "Let me take her." He hesitated for a second, then passed Anna into her arms. The little girl instantly curled into Sienna's chest, letting out a soft, broken sigh, like her body recognized home. Sienna led them inside, moving quickly, but gently. She laid Anna on the couch, wrapped her in warm blankets, fetched medicine and a thermometer, her movements calm and practiced. Dante stood motionless in the doorway, soaked, silent, watching. After checking Anna, Sienna finally turned to him. "She'll be okay," she said quietly. "She just needs rest, and maybe some peace." Dante's voice cracked. "I'm trying." "I know," Sienna whispered. There was a long pause, only the sound of rain against the windows and Anna's soft breathing between them. Then Dante stepped forward. "She hasn't slept through the night since Rachel died," he said, his voice breaking. 6 months, Sienna. 6 months of nightmares and screams and—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "Then you came, and suddenly she slept. She laughed. She looked at me like I could be someone better." His hands were shaking. "She loves you," he said. "And I don't know what to do without you there." Sienna looked down, fighting tears. "Dante!" He knelt right there on the hardwood floor of her apartment, soaked from the storm outside. Dante Moretti, feared mafia boss, powerful and untouchable, went down on one knee. Not to propose, but to beg. He reached up gently, taking her hand, his voice barely audible through the weight in his throat. "Please," he said, his accent thick with emotion. "Don't leave us again. I know we started this as a lie, but Anna, she sees the truth. And so do I." Sienna's eyes filled, her free hand brushing against Anna's damp curls. Dante held on tighter. "She needs you," he whispered. "And so do I." And in that moment, more than contracts or appearances, more than danger or guilt or fear, what mattered was what had always mattered. Family. The backyard was strung with soft lights. Pastel-colored streamers fluttered from the trees, and a table of cupcakes, candies, and paper crowns sat in the center of it all. Balloons shaped like stars bobbed in the warm breeze, and the sound of children's laughter floated through the garden. It was Anna's birthday, and Sienna was back. She stood near the patio doors, wearing the pink, flowy dress Anna had picked out weeks ago, before everything fell apart. Her golden hair, loosely curled and tucked behind one ear, glowed under the fading sun as she looked out into the yard at the small crowd of neighbors, a few trusted associates, classmates, and their parents. She felt a strange, quiet calm. Then a familiar voice called out, "Sienna!" Anna ran toward her in her birthday dress, bright pink with little embroidered stars, and launched herself into her arms. Sienna caught her midair, twirling once as Anna giggled. The little girl hugged her tight, resting her head on Sienna's shoulder like she had never left. "I missed you," Anna whispered. "I missed you more," Sienna replied softly. From a distance, Dante watched. His eyes never left the two of them. Dressed in a dark button-down with sleeves rolled, no tie, and a gentle smile that rarely appeared before this chapter of his life. He looked less like a mafia boss tonight, and more like a man who had finally come home. As the sun dipped lower, the party settled into soft music and friendly chatter. Dante gathered everyone near the garden's center, where a low platform had been set for cake cutting. Anna stood between her father and Sienna, grinning, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Before we blow out candles," Dante said, his deep voice carrying across the garden, "I just want to say thank you. Thank you all for being here to celebrate Anna. She is the bravest, kindest, most magical 5-year-old I've ever known." Anna beamed. Dante glanced toward Sienna, then back at the guests. "There's something else," he said, his voice lowering, steady but sincere. "Some of you may know that this year has been different for us. We've had change, loss, and the unexpected." He paused. Everyone was listening now. "Earlier this year, I asked someone for a favor. I asked her to pretend to be part of something that wasn't real. But what none of us expected was how real it would become." Sienna looked up, surprised. Her hands froze on the edges of the cake platter. Dante stepped off the platform and walked toward her. "I told her it would only be 1 week, just 1 week of pretending. But 1 week wasn't enough." The guests grew quiet. He stopped in front of her, gaze steady and open, vulnerable in a way no one had ever seen him. "Because 1 week wasn't enough for Anna to stop calling you mommy, and it wasn't enough for me to stop calling you the love of my life." Sienna's breath caught in her chest. Then Anna's voice broke through the hush, high and happy. "She's really my mommy now." Laughter rippled through the crowd, some guests dabbing tears, others clapping gently. Even some of Dante's hardened associates in the back looked moved, though they'd never admit it. Sienna looked down at Anna, who was now bouncing with joy, then back at Dante. Her eyes shimmered. "I was never pretending," she whispered. Dante reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Neither was I." The candles were lit. Anna closed her eyes and made her wish, though in her heart she already had it all. As the flame flicked out and cheers erupted, Sienna leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to Dante's cheek, lingering there for a moment. And this time no one was acting. The garden had never looked more beautiful. Soft white petals floated down from an arch woven with lilies and baby's breath. Rows of wooden chairs lined the path, their ends tied with silk ribbons in pale rose. Twinkling lights wrapped around the trees, casting a golden hue over the small gathering of close friends, family, and a few trusted members of Dante's inner circle. It was intimate. It was peaceful. It was exactly what Sienna Blake had once dreamed of and never believed she would have. 1 year had passed since Anna's 5th birthday, and now, in the same backyard where it all began, she stood beside Dante Moretti, no longer pretending. Anna, now 6, wore a tiny blush-colored dress that swayed with every bounce of her step. She had insisted on being the flower girl and the maid of honor. With the basket of petals in one hand and a proud smile on her face, she skipped down the aisle, tossing flowers in all directions, giggling as guests laughed gently. Sienna waited under the arch, her blonde hair swept into soft waves that shimmered in the light. Her dress was simple, elegant, with a satin ribbon at the waist, picked by Anna, of course. Then came the sound of piano. Not a recording, not a hired musician. It was Dante. He sat at a white baby grand placed under a tree, playing the melody he had written for her. It was the same melody she had first heard that quiet night when he had played alone in his study. Only now, it was fuller, richer, with new notes. Notes of hope, of healing, of home. When he reached the final chord, he stood, buttoned his dark suit jacket, and walked down the aisle to meet the woman who had turned his fortress into something more than walls and guards. Their vows were not long. Sienna went first. When we met, we made a deal to pretend. But somewhere between bedtime stories and birthday candles, we stopped acting. We became something real. And standing here now, I know that every twist of fate brought me to the only place I was ever meant to be. Right beside you. Dante's voice was quiet, steady, his accent wrapping around every word. You were never part of the plan, and yet somehow you became the best thing I never saw coming. You didn't just love my daughter, you taught me how to love again. You turned a house full of silence and shadows into laughter and light. From day one, you were real to us, and I swear to spend every day proving I was worth that gift. They turned to Anna, who stood between them, eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. Dante knelt, taking her small hand in his scarred one. Daddy's never going to let anyone leave you again. Not even Mommy Sienna. Anna threw her arms around both of them. I have a real mommy now, she cried, her voice muffled against them. The guests clapped, some with tears in their eyes as the officiant declared them husband and wife. The three of them walked hand in hand down the aisle. The sun dipped behind the trees, casting everything in a golden glow. And Anna, pink dress fluttering, curls bouncing, twirled, jumped, skipped between them, her laughter echoing like music. From the back row, Lucia, Dante's right hand, allowed herself a rare smile. Even some of the toughest men in attendance, men who'd seen and done terrible things, found themselves moved by the sight of their boss, the man they feared and respected, walking with his family, whole, happy, human. As they reached the end of the aisle, Dante pulled Sienna close, pressing his forehead to hers. Thank you, he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. For what? She asked softly. For seeing me. Not what I do. Not what I've done. She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. You made that easy. Anna tugged on both their hands. Can we have cake now? They laughed, and Dante scooped her up, settling her on his hip as the three of them walked toward the reception area, where music was already playing and glasses were being raised. No more pretending, no more lies, no more walls. Just love. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who still believes in love's power to transform. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to support more emotional, meaningful tales. Until next time, love fiercely, hope always, and never stop believing in second chances.